Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most. I drank 4 bottles of water during today's episode because it is a lot to take in. We're going to talk about bruised butts. We're going to talk about pickleball. We're going to talk about masterpieces. Sit back, relax, enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
First and foremost, dear listener, I want to apologize if there is some labored breathing during this podcast. My joints and bones and muscles are all incredibly sore, and I am not moving at peak efficiency right now. Last night, we packed up all of Christmas, which is a big deal in my house because we have room after room after room that gets decorated for Christmas. But that also means I have to go into the crawl space under my house. When my house was originally built, my grandfather had them add this crawl space that runs the full length of the main floor. So it's this massive, just like concrete box that is underneath the house. It's where our HVAC system is. It's where, all the piping and our internet comes into the house. But when they built it, they were supposed to build it 2 feet lower, and they didn't. And then they added ductwork. So now the only way I can move in there is if I'm on my hands and knees. And we're talking like, imagine crawling from one end of my house, Tucker, to the other on your hands and knees.
That would suck.
It would suck. But it is a great space, and it's got a ton of storage. So, like, all the Christmas stuff goes down there. I've got a washer and dryer and dishwasher down there that are perfectly good, just waiting for a day to get called up. I've got decor from my grandfather's house, from our lake cabin, from our house, from our old house. I've got framed photos, memory boxes. I've got all of the stuff that was in the JJ Meets World studio when we had our previous studio space. It's just a storage spot for everything. And once a decade, I have to go in there and actually like organize some stuff, right? So the best of my abilities, at one point, like, you just need to throw stuff in there, right? You don't want to get in there and get rid of all of the Halloween stuff and put it all together and blah, 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 blah. Last night, I chose to do that. So I put on a pair of overalls so that my butt crack wouldn't show. And I crawled around in that crawl space for almost 3 hours. And I moved appliances. I moved furniture. I thought was actually pretty smart. So I bought these different types of casters. So one is like it's 3 casters that spin around in 360 degrees. And then they're connected by a little piece of metal that has a divot in the middle of the metal. So you can put the leg of a piece of furniture on it. And so if you put one of these on each piece of furniture, you now have a rolling piece of furniture. So I did that with a couple of tables that would have been impossible for me to move on my own. I did this for some appliances, some things where I've got like plastic shelving units that are holding a bunch of stuff, but they're stiff enough where I could put them on top of casters. I also had a flat plate caster that has 5 wheels underneath. So I got a lot done, but I couldn't take my socks off yesterday because my body was so like, hey man, screw you. And today, and like, I mean, I am so sore. I can't even describe how sore I am. And this morning I woke up and I sleep buck naked because I feel like that's my connection to nature. And
Yeah, the natural, like,
Yeah.
fibers of your
I
bed.
like to think every morning that I'm being born. And I have got a bruise on my butt that is intense. It to describe it, it goes from the hip all the way over and then just like peaks a little bit into like no man's land.
And this is just from crawling around in that space?
This is from crawling around and then like, here's the thing, like I'm in a seated position trying to use all my strength to pick up a piece of furniture so I can put it on a caster. And so I'm sure I was putting just a lot of pressure and it's like it's concrete, but it's not perfect. It's, there are areas where it's kind of wavy and there's areas where there's
Sure.
like just junk on the ground. Over
It's
the years
treacherous,
it
uneven.
collects crap. So
Gotcha.
I might have a little bit of labored breathing because like when I try and stand up, it is a production.
How much of what you keep down there do you think you really need to keep?
So I thought about that yesterday. Let's see, in like 2003, we had water in the basement. And so we pulled everything out of literally everything out of that. Well, okay, technically it wasn't water in the basement. What we had was an air conditioning like outlet that was feeding down into the drain we have down there, and it got kicked
Uh-huh.
away from the drain. And so over time it had caused like some water damage.
Sure.
So, the type of thing where it wasn't like a pipe burst or something. But so we said, hey, we'll use this as an opportunity, pulled everything out of there, decide what to keep, decide what to throw, and then put everything back. Then I did it again in 2015, I think, like right after my mom died, and your dad actually was the guy that I pulled in there, which is great because your dad is very compact and
Yes.
has good muscles. So I've only made a couple human beings who I know I've guilted them into going in there. One is your dad, the other Phil Goodell. And I'm like, hey, come into this space that has no natural light
Mhm.
and help me with this.
Well,
So
don't forget I'm also compact, so you can always put me on the list of people you wanna send down into the rat
I
tunnel.
will. And and for example, like the reason I did yesterday on my own was I had to be the one to make the decisions and I didn't want someone who was just sitting there waiting, and like
Oh, yeah, sure,
and
sure.
I'm trying but the stuff in there is stuff that I know I want to keep at this point. Right? So
Right.
for example, the dining room, I have an entire dining room set that's in there. And you'd be like, why?
Yeah.
Because I feel like at one point we might give it to someone. The washer and dryer that I have in there used to be two. So there used to be a set from my old apartment and then a set from my sister's old apartment. And one day randomly someone had mentioned like, oh yeah, my parents' washer and dryer went out. And I said, well, would they like this one? And essentially I gave it away for free. Right. So it
Mhm.
was my opportunity. The dishwasher, we replaced my mom's dishwasher, and for whatever reason, we held on to this one. And my mom was like, "See, I'm still getting the spots," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's because you're using this." Yeah, and so she's like, "Oh, that's why I got rid of the old dishwasher."
Oh, she thought, like, the old dishwasher was broken?
Right, and it wasn't. Turns out it's not at all. And so I've got those things, and then like I've got the blueprints for my house, and I've got a lot of stuff I've kept that date back to like my grandfather on my mom's side. And my mom became the keeper of that stuff. And now I am. But it does bring up an interesting point of like, at what point do I throw away a box full of photos of people I don't know or recognize?
Oh, sure.
Right? Like,
Right.
I don't have any idea who these
Okay, so
individuals are.
so for stuff like that, specifically photos or media, but this is just me. I mean, I am an archival person. So like if I found something like that, if I probably would never throw those away. And I'd also probably digitize those just because those are, really rare, right? Moments in time someone took a photo of and people who may not even exist anymore are in there, but it's like it's not like there's like like that silverware set you've got. There's a bunch of silverware sets out there, right? And there's probably a bunch of that same one out there somewhere. But for stuff like that, I mean, I would definitely hold on to that. But a couple of boxes of photos is going to pale in comparison to a bunch of Christmas ornaments or shit that has zero meaning whatsoever. Maybe if you've got something like, hey, we've got this set of dishes, maybe we'll give them to someone someday. We'll make that day tomorrow, and then you will give them to someone. Then you won't have them anymore. I'm only saying that because I'm in the mode too of working on my house and all my crap I've got stored, and I can always find stuff in my possession to get rid of. I can always find shit to get rid of. I think I've both my parents kind of hoard shit, and so I get that from them too. And then I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't need this anymore. Never really did.
It's interesting we start with this because I am about to embark on a brand new part of my career that I want people to keep and to save and to hold on for no apparent reason, which is last week I took a meeting with the FM Extra, and I am now a new columnist for them, doing a
Jesus.
food column along with my radio partner, Amy Eiler. So we'll have a weekly space where we can give you a recipe and then a quick blurb about it. We can talk about the thing that we enjoy the most when it comes to a particular type of cookbook. It's funny, Tucker, have you ever gone into a meeting where someone like immediately you can tell that they really want you to do whatever they're about to ask you, so they throw as much butter on top of this biscuit as they possibly can.
It's been a long time since I've had a meeting like that. So, but I think I know what you're talking about.
It was so incredibly complimentary, and
Is this in your capacity as KFGO hosts?
no, well, I mean, no. So this does have something to do with KFGO, but it doesn't. So this is
it's outside of it. It's not like KFGO is saying, "Hey, come use our people."
Right. So we were approached independently, but they're like, well, we like you guys as a team together. Like, we like what you guys do when it comes to like food related stuff. And the woman who used to do the food reviews on the Extra passed away during the pandemic, I believe they said. And she got the most mail of anybody else at the Extra. And they said, like, this is the type of thing where they print like 7,500 copies of the Extra, and they have a 95% pickup rate, and blah 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 blah. And they said this is a prominent feature for them. And they said, listen, we don't want champagne vinaigrette with caviar, like reduction. They're like, we want recipes that people feel confident. And I know one of the very first things I'm going to talk about, Tucker, is I'm going to do a review of frozen meatballs you can get in the grocery store and prove to everyone why the Simix brand is the best.
Which, by the way, I had a Simix meatball miracle happen last night.
What's that?
I found another bag in my freezer I'd forgotten about.
Oh, man.
I was like, God, I don't, I'm trying to not go out to eat too much anymore if I can help it, save some cash. And I was like, God, I'm hungry, but I don't really got anything. Oh my God, I have Simix meatballs. Oh my God. They were so good.
Simix meatballs, by the way, not a sponsor of this program.
But they're not, but they are the best tasting, pre-cooked frozen meatballs that you can get at the grocery store. I think ever since you told me about Simix. Yeah, ever since you told me about Simix, I went and I tried them and I was like, oh, this is pretty good, but I want to try the other ones to see if they compare. So I did. Simix is the best. Easy. And I'm usually just getting just the beef ones, not like the beef and Italian ones.
Yeah, we get the beef ones because to me, what we do, you can add the straight beef ones, like if you're making a spaghetti dish, or you can just have them, like we make mashed potatoes, gravy, and meatballs. Like that'll be a little dinner for us.
Right. I also like is it Bertoli's? I think it's Bertoli is the brand, but you can get like bags of frozen pasta, like a full meal, like penne with asparagus and shrimp in like a vodka sauce. And it's really easy to cook. You just throw it in a pan and heat it up over 30 minutes or whatever. So I'll do that, but then I'll actually throw in some Simix meatballs in there as well.
When I was a kid, I thought I couldn't have a pasta that comes in a vodka sauce because I wasn't 21 yet. And so it kept
Yeah.
me from ordering that for many years until I saw someone order it. And I'm like, but you're not old enough to drink. And then I was like, oh, don't worry about it. Because I also didn't eat like rum cake because I was worried about getting drunk. Uh, but that's the thing is like, I feel like I've got plenty to talk about when it comes to food and
I
to
mean,
enjoying it.
you were basically a teetotaler for a period of time
Oh yeah.
as an adult, weren't you?
Yeah.
Like you just weren't touching anything that wasn't Diet Coke.
And it really to be quite honest, I have to go to a work function today that's all centered around a football game. And I know they're gonna be like, hey, we'll get you a beer. And I'm like, nope, no, thank you. And they'll offer me like, oh, you want like a mixed drink? You want like a Bloody Mary? To me, I am just not a drinker. I mean, don't get me wrong. Have I had nights where I drank? Absolutely. But it's not something I do on a consistent basis. Like if you tore apart my house, you would find a liquor cabinet that has like 4 bottles in it and they're all dusty. And like one is Cointreau. um and so it's just I have never been like a drinker. And I always say like this, I have a great time not drinking. So like
Yeah.
sometimes people are like, oh, you think you're better than us, you think you're better, and I'm like, no, I just have a really good time and I don't need alcohol to enhance it because I have such a good time to begin with.
Yeah.
So
The older I'm getting now, I just had my very first 2-day hangover after New Year's.
did you
I've
now?
I've never had a 2-day one. I've had ones that were all day long, terrible. This was one that lasted for 2 days, about a day and a half, I should say. And I'd partied it up on New Year's Eve, but not to the point that I would have thought I would have had a 2-day hangover. I had like 4 or 5 beers and like 2 whiskeys, so I knew I'd be getting something the next day, but not what I got. And I just think every time I get a hangover, I kind of go, I don't know if I want to drink anymore because it's just not worth it, right? I rarely ever drink anyway. So then, okay, so if you're going to hang out today at a restaurant
Yep.
to talk about sports ball, what things do you say to people when they approach you to talk about football? Like, do you really have to play the role of someone who knows what's happening? Or can you be like, yeah, isn't this great? Hey, buy our cookbook, right? Like, are you doing that kind of a thing? Or do you have to come up with, can you believe when that guy touched down? Like, you just say stuff like that?
I mean, the good thing is I know enough that like during the actual watch party of the game, I know when to cheer and when to not to cheer, right? Um and while my sports knowledge is very limited, I can get away with stuff like this being like, hey, I mean, NDSU's got the advantage, right? They've done this 9 other times down in Frisco. They know what that field's like. They know what the conditions are like. The Jackrabbits, yes, have been down there and played, but they played during that weird spring year during the pandemic. So they were down there in the spring, not in the dead of winter. I think that gives NDSU an advantage.
That was really good,
Thank you
JJ.
very much. And that's the thing is I can talk about stuff like this. I guess the thing is like this. It's not that I don't have a knowledge or I'm ignorant of what's going on. I just don't care about it. Right? That's the thing is I don't care about it. So I don't I don't find myself getting more time and energy to put into it. And so I can have a conversation. In fact, I've shocked a couple people when they've been with me and they know how little of a sports nut I am. And they're like, how did you pull that out of your rear end in this conversation? I said, well, because I pay attention when people talk, like
Mhm.
I get what I'm supposed to. I know what feeds everybody else, but I don't get this. It's just like when I talk to somebody about, like the symphony. I am not a fan of going and watching the symphony. I'm not moved by the music in the way that they are. But I can tell you, like, oh yeah, definitely. Like this is one of those things where you've chosen an interesting theme with all of the selections in this particular symphony, and I think that the movement is nice because you've picked something that starts small and ends big, and so
I
it just
see.
doesn't
I
interest me.
see. What is your Super Bowl then? Is it the Oscars?
I don't
Is it the
know.
Tonys?
To be quite honest, like the Oscars haven't really intrigued me as much the last couple of years. And I think
Yeah, I
it's,
haven't watched them in ever.
to me, I think the big problem is that I think that the slate of movies we've had in the last 5 years are just not great, especially for what Oscar rewards as the best movie, right? So, for example, last year I was all in on Spider-Man No Way Home. No movie gave me an emotional response more than Spider-Man No Way Home. And it is a classic example of Hollywood having to play nice because they had to balance. Like, here are two guys who had a chance at a billion-dollar franchise, and it did not follow through. Like, Tobey Maguire should have played Spider-Man like 4 more times if he really had wanted, right?
It sounds like he might be getting that chance coming up
Which
here.
is great, and that's thanks to Spider-Man No Way Home, right? But
What's that?
that's thanks to Spider-Man No Way Home, right? Like,
Yeah, and Secret Wars
right.
coming
So,
up.
like, the thing that amazes me is they were able to broker a deal with these other guys and from other studios and from, and write something that makes total sense to me, right? Like,
Yeah.
that it's not like the Amazing Spider-Man movie series didn't exist. It did exist, but that was the Peter Parker story in like another dimension. And
Right.
that
I
freaking
think
is
that's
amazing.
one of the secrets of Marvel's success seems to be successfully doing things that on paper seem almost impossible. So just the notion of, yeah, we're gonna make 30 movies first before we make a two-parter superhero extravaganza, right? Like, that's crazy, right? That's billions of
Yep.
dollars. That's so much time. And then, the notion of, yeah, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna basically, I mean, it's a movie that not only leans hard into fan service, but makes it feel like it belongs, right? Like, I'm not against fan service, but fan service can be done well or done poorly. So, like in the Star Wars prequels, every time someone goes, "Oh, we have to say R2D2's name," let's make sure we say it in a way that the audience cheers every time we do it, versus like No Way Home, when they're like, how do we find a story conceit to get the three Spider-Men together? Because wouldn't that be awesome to see them talking to each other? But that's crazy. Like, obviously that's the thing the fans would want to see. How do we make that work in our world? Well, here we go. Here's the way we make it work. And it works and it fits. It fits so well. So the reporting that seems to be coming out right now that Secret Wars is going to do something somewhat similar to Infinity War and Endgame, except instead of superheroes from across the MCU, it's going to be superheroes from across the multiverse. So we may be getting a storyline where Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man are actually teaming up to do something, which would be really, 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 really cool. So I'm excited to see all of that. And that's the thing with, like, I want to know what the DC announcements are going to be here in January with Gunn and Safran saying, "Hey, here's how we're going to approach things going forward," right? Because that is just a fucking bucket of worms going on right now.
It is. And one, it's the thing that, like, again, I'm not excited for it, right? Like, I've already seen the DCEU churn out a bunch of crap. And so at this point,
Mhm.
they got to win me back over. And that's,
Mhm.
again, going back to your question of like, is the Oscars the Super Bowl for me? It used to be, but now it's really not as much. And I think there's a lot of politics that go into it.
You know
And
what? You know what we should do, JJ?
uh,
I haven't done like an Oscars watch party for a long time.
yeah, you want to do that?
How about you and I do an Oscars watch party, but we don't watch the Oscars. We watch the On Cinema Oscars
Oh, see,
broadcast
now
because
I love that
they always do one and it's way better. It's way
so
better.
much better. Um,
Yeah.
what I do really like is like if I had to pick like a piece of television every year that I get excited for and I'm amped to watch, I really like the Tony Awards,
Mm,
right? Like, I like to see
mhm.
what is going on for the theater critics. And you get, it's still as star-studded as the Oscars are, but they don't do things
Sure.
like, cut out the best song. You get to see all these neat performances and dig
Right.
that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, in fact, when Jill and I went to New York, we saw Beetlejuice on Broadway, which there's the whole idea of taking a movie and turning it into a Broadway musical is not new, right? Like they did it with
Right.
Footloose, but Broadway was packed with that type of stuff when we were there. So Beetlejuice, Funny Girl, Some Like It Hot. I mean, there are just a ton of these IPs that started out as movies now are Broadway musicals. But when we saw Beetlejuice, what I really liked about it was, of course, you have to change some elements from a movie script to a show script because that's just the nature of things, right? But they're able also
Mhm.
now to see, like, okay, what were the things that people most resonated with the movie, and then we can amp those things up a little bit, right? So you were mentioning like Star Wars, right? Like R2D2, right? R2D2 becomes this giant massive thing that ends up becoming fan service, but this isn't necessarily fan service. This is if we found something that works, we can continue, we can use it a little bit more versus not, versus being
Right.
completely married to a script written 35 years ago. Anyway, the guy who plays Beetlejuice, Alex Brightman, is amazing. Like this role becomes his own, right? And so he got a concussion on Christmas, and the last performance is January 8th. And so he ended up having to like sit out the last performances, but I think he got into the last two shows of it on Broadway. And it got me thinking about the fact that if to him, this is probably up to this point in his life, his masterpiece, right? Like this is the thing that he's put the most of his time and energy into. It's a lead
Mhm.
Broadway role. It's something that people like the cult following for this musical is immense. And I think it's just, it's a little slice of heaven. And so this must be his masterpiece, which is a question I'd like to ask you, Tucker. So think of what you've done in your life up until now. What would be considered your masterpiece for you right now? I posed this question to a couple other people, and some of the things that they came back with is like, well, my kids are my masterpiece. And I said, very valid answer. I can buy that. I had a couple people who said, like, oh, my college degree was my masterpiece.
Mm.
Um, Somebody else said my masterpiece was a vacation I took with my grandfather where we drove across the United States to put my grandmother's ashes into the Grand Canyon. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, I got to know this person that I virtually did not know, other than the fact that there are, the same blood runs in our veins. Um,
Mhm.
and I thought it's an interesting question because you take someone like Leonardo da Vinci, and depending on who you talk to, Da Vinci's masterpiece might be The Last Supper, the alfresco painting he did, The Last Supper, or it might be his designs for a flying machine that inspired, the Wright brothers, or it might be his work with politics and diplomacy. And here's a guy who has many masterpieces in his life and is fascinating in that front. But if you had to pick something up until this point in your life that you would consider your personal masterpiece, do you know what you might pick?
Oh, that's tough. I'm actually struggling to think of one thing that I would go, "Oh, like and I don't mean, oh, there's so many to choose from." I'm saying I can't think of a single thing that would raise to the level of me wanting to call it a masterpiece. I mean, my cats I love more than life, right? And so I could always say, "Oh, my cats are my masterpiece," I guess, but it doesn't feel right. So, um, yeah, I don't know. That might be because I'm so critical of my work. My like so
Yep.
like when I finished Mr. Burns, I was really proud of the finished product. Of the shows that I've directed, I think that's my favorite. I think that's the one that came together the best, but I wouldn't call it a masterpiece. Like I wouldn't say anything like that. This podcast I'm very proud of. It's been going for a number of years. We're over 320 episodes. That's certainly one of my primary accomplishments. I would say that I'm very proud of. Would I call it a masterpiece? No, I don't think so.
What about your performance like in Hamlet?
No, 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 not even close. I was I was okay with my performance in Hamlet. Um, I wasn't over the moon for what I did. I was happy to have the opportunity, and it felt good to do, and I really enjoyed the process of doing it. I tried watching it once, and I cannot watch myself. I hate looking at myself.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm surprised I can edit these podcasts and hear my own voice, but I'm kind of used to it at this point. But yeah, so I'm gonna have to think about that. Um, sometimes I think it sounds like when people are using the word masterpiece, they're talking about what is my most precious memory, what is the pinnacle that I can think of. And I've had a lot of moments like that with my nephew Dane
Oh,
over the past
really?
couple of years. Yeah, where I'm just like, this is the best. This is. I've never thought I could love someone this much. I never thought I could feel this happy in this moment. So there have been moments with my nephew, and now that I've got a niece on the way, it's I'm looking forward to maybe making more memories like that with her. So like, I think I'm the kind of person who would tell you, who would answer my family and my kids, right? If I had them, because that's the thing that I want. Like that's like the thing that if I don't do in my life, I'll feel like, what did I use my life for then?
Yeah.
So I think that might be part of it is like someone might consider a masterpiece. Like that was the thing that all of this work was meant to help me make. And it might be whenever I do make a family. That might be what I'm thinking. In terms of things that are just art that I've made, as far as commercials go, that recent Vogel action figure commercial that Jason Jacobson and I made together, that came together better than I think any commercial I've worked on has come together before. So like there are things like that where I go, okay, this is a new high bar, right? This is a new level that I want to get over. I just finished a couple days ago a 4-minute animation I've been working on for about 4 months. And at one point I thought, this is awesome. Maybe this would be my quote unquote masterpiece. And I watch it now and I go, no, it's definitely not, because I know I can do way better. Way, 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 way better. It might be the best I've done so far, but it's nowhere close to being a masterpiece. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take for me, JJ, to get to the point where I can say that about something that I have made. But I'm also very self-critical. Like speaking just of like the art that I make, the videos and films or whatever I make. Um, I couldn't even tell you if I have a style. I don't think I have a style yet because I feel like I'm still figuring it out. My dad once said to me, "No, you definitely have a style," but he couldn't put it into words. And so I kind of go, I don't think I do, right? I think I'm still figuring that out. So I feel like if I have a masterpiece in me, I'm a ways away from it. That's just how it feels.
To me, what I think one of the most interesting parts of the conversation, Tucker, and you kind of like, we got to hear you go through this process, is to decide, okay, so what does masterpiece mean? Is it something that you put out into the world for other people to enjoy? Is it something that you get remembered by? Is it something that brought you personal gratification? I think that the definition of a masterpiece is almost more interesting than what someone chooses. So, like the people who choose their children as their masterpiece, I was asking, like, okay, well, why? Right? Like, if your masterpiece is your child, why is that? Is it just because you cared for something and you kept it alive, and now it thinks, it breathes, it goes on, and it'll do whatever it's supposed to do in its own life? I mean, because to some extent, like, could a Tamagotchi have been your masterpiece by that definition?
I think so much of it just has to do with what is it that you appreciate as a masterpiece. So like, it's something that I think really what it is, you're saying, I take the greatest pride in this. The best thing I ever did, right, was that. And while a masterpiece typically refers to some work you put out into the world for others to take in, um, I think it's really you're saying, this is the thing that I prize that I've done. This is the best thing I've done over all other things.
And to me, also don't think that like a masterpiece doesn't have to be something that's years long. It doesn't have to be something that, like if your masterpiece, that this thing that you did that people want to remember you by is because you chewed more bubble gum than anyone else at a church carnival. You know what? Good for you. Like if people are talking to you about it 30 years later, like, yeah, you remember when you chewed all that bubble gum at the sleep in?
I mean, you're really talking about life events that make it into the obit.
Right. Correct. Yeah. But in like, hardly anyone actually writes their own obit, right? And so, like,
Right.
what are the things that you want people to know? When today I've changed what my masterpiece is over and over. Like when I was having this initial discussion, I thought, well, the Santaland Diaries, right? Like up to this point in my life,
Mm-hmm.
that is my masterpiece because it was an extreme amount of work and the gratification I got out of it, the joy that people got out of it other than myself, people I had never met, was awesome. Then someone's like, well, what about line benders then? And I'm like, yeah, I did some great stuff with that. And today, what I thought my masterpiece could be was when I created parking lot bingo during the pandemic, and
Mm-hmm.
to me, I provided the only thing that people could go and do as an event for months during a worldwide pandemic, right? Like
Right.
when People Magazine called to do a profile on it, they said, these are the biggest event. You had 550 people participate in the last one. These are the biggest events going on in the country right now. And I was like, heck yes, they are. And I thought to myself, like, that's something I did for people. And given it's over and it's done with, and I don't want to think that I peaked with it, but that's the thing. I'm talking about the masterpiece up to this point. And I'm pretty proud of that, like I also helped plan and set a world record for a cakewalk. There are certain things that I've done that I'm proud of that I accomplished, but like I think it's even more that you know that my masterpiece is like what I want ultimately is I want what Da Vinci had, right? I want people to argue about what my masterpiece was
Mm.
and never personally have to weigh in on it because I want to hear what other people think were the reasons why it was important that I was on this planet and things that made their life better in some way,
Well, yeah,
shape, or form.
I think I would have to before I would ever. I do have a goal of in my lifetime. I want to be. I guess I want to be feel that I am, but also be validated externally in some way that I'm world class at something.
Oh,
Right. Like that. That would be. I want to feel like I've achieved at least that level of ability at a certain thing. Could it be acting, directing, whatever, right? I'm not quite sure what thing it would be at, which is probably the problem, right? I haven't identified what is that one thing I want to be world class at, because then I can focus on that, which anyone who's world class at any particular thing, they have focus and drive about that thing at a level that I'm not currently showing or feeling right now. I'm also still in recovery from the holidays. So I'm also kind of just like, oh God, this is like the first time in a long time that I don't have a million projects on my plate that I'm constantly thinking about.
hey, let me ask you a
But
question. When was the last time you took a bubble bath?
I was a kid, probably.
You should take one.
A bubble
Yeah, they're
bath?
great.
I mean, I'm not against taking a bubble bath at all, but the thing that sounds good to me are not the bubbles, but the heat.
Yeah. Everything about it. So I think the bubble bath aspect of it is the a little bit of whimsy, right? And it
Mm.
makes the tub smell good, makes you smell good.
I will say I'm at the age now where I do appreciate the idea of having a working hot tub.
Yeah.
That does make sense to me just because of body aches. Just because, like, oh, my whole body needs to go and do this thing.
But don't you kind of also at the same time be like, okay, listen, when I'm done with a bath, I don't just keep the bath water in there and add a little bit of chlorine so that the next time I
Right.
go in, I love a hot tub when it comes to relaxation. I mean, I will tell you right off the
Yeah.
bat, that is something I constantly think about is getting a hot tub again because they are top notch. And like today when I'm all sore, I can imagine getting into a hot tub and being so happy. Just the
Right.
happiest clam ever.
Yeah. Dad has one here, but the pump is broken, so it doesn't work.
That sucks.
So, yeah. But I mean, at the same time, there's like, I've made a lot of use out of hot showers over the past couple of days because there's something getting pinched in my upper back, some nerve cluster somewhere that oftentimes if I sneeze, cough, or laugh too hard, and this is just the past couple of days, it'll make my arms ache. because something's getting pinched, and I know it's causing from something getting pinched because the day after New Year's when I was throwing up, that's when it first started. Was during a throw up session where I was like, oh God, and now my arms ache like they've been beaten.
Ugh.
And then like ever since then, it's been off and on. Like sometimes it hurts and sometimes it doesn't. So like I've got something pinching in my upper back. And the only thing that's made it feel instantly good have been hot showers. So getting that sort of heat to unwind whatever tension is deeply rooted around whatever nerve cluster would be really, really nice. And so I'm just at that age where it's like, yeah, you were never getting younger, but now you're really not getting younger.
Sure.
And so you should really start taking care of that stuff too. But in general, I'm just not a physically healthy, strong person because of my maintenance routine, which doesn't really exist. So
Sure.
feels like if I want to have all these other things happen, I want to make a masterpiece of a family or some shit, I should probably start doing a better job of my own self-maintenance just so I can make it.
Self-maintenance, interesting thing that we take for granted in some cases, right? Because there are things I do that bring me joy, but don't necessarily bring me bring me like what how do I want to say this? They don't make me feel better in the way that I need when I get like a good massage or
Right.
after I get out like a really long shower session. I did buy something recently for some self-care that I can't wait to use, which is this. You put hot water into this cup, you twist the cup onto this nozzle, and the nozzle goes in your ear, and it's like an ear wash. And so it'll help like get out, if you've got a lot of earwax or something like that. To me, getting my ears, have you ever done candling? Do you remember this at all? Have you ever done
No,
candling?
no, I haven't.
So it's an old school method of getting rid of earwax where you light a candle and it goes over this like cone, and the cone goes to a tube. The tube kind of goes up to your ear, and you hold your ear over it, and the heat from the candle travels through this tube, but it cools itself down a little bit so it's not that I'll burn you. I mean, it's not an actual flame.
Mhm.
And you put it in your ear and you allow it to melt the earwax, and the earwax drips out of your ear. And
Okay.
this is an old school method of, how people used to clean out their ears. And it's in a lot of ways, it's better than Q-tips because Q-tips, will just shove earwax and like compact it in the back.
Right.
There are specialty devices now that look like little tiny ice augers that you can put in that are supposed to like take the earwax that you're doing and you twist it and it pulls it back the way an auger would pull back ice and stuff that it's crushing or dirt. I just haven't gotten myself to the point of buying one of those yet, but I kind of wanted, like, I want to try everything when it comes to cleaning out my ears. And I know there's someone right now who's like, JJ, that's natural. It's supposed to be there. Earwax protects your eardrum. I don't care. I want to feel good. I want my ears not
You still
to
have too
itch
much
as
of it.
much. That's what I want. And I need it. And so that's going to be some of my self-care coming up, is I'm going to take care of that. I should have done self-care last night. I should have immediately taken some ibuprofen and I should have gotten into like a hot bath and let my joints
Mm.
kind of figure it out. And now I'm paying the price for it the next day. I am no spring chicken anymore, Tucker. I just can't do
Nope.
what I used to do. You learned that the other day with your 2-day hangover. I mean, we are not
Mhm.
the spry 20 somethings that we used to be.
Yep. And even when I was 20 something, I wasn't that spry.
I think you were pretty spry.
I mean, compared to me now, sure. But compared to other 20 somethings at that time, not even close.
I always regret not doing something more athletic back in
Mm.
the day because like I'm a bigger person, but it doesn't mean that I'm not nimble. Like I find myself to be very, like if I had been on a football team, I probably would have been pretty good at blocking stuff, you know?
Mhm. Oh,
Um
they would have found a position for you, no doubt.
right, yeah. And like I wouldn't have been a tennis player. I got the height for maybe some basketball,
Mhm.
but it's not something that ever happened. Also, by the way, I am currently, and this is not a joke, I am currently looking into bringing North Dakota its first ever professional sports league.
Really?
Yeah. So there is a national pickleball league, and it's co-ed, and there's like 12 teams right now, and I'm in talks of having a North Dakota team, and so it would be the
Wow.
first professional sports team in North Dakota, like to
You mean
play on
everyone would be getting
in a
paid?
national league.
Everyone would be getting paid.
Yeah, everyone. Well, you got 4 people. That's all it takes to make your pickleball league.
Yeah, and all 4 are getting
Yeah,
paid
all
from
4.
who?
They're getting paid. They're going to be on the cover of like our equivalent of Sports Illustrated in North Dakota.
Yeah, our equivalent of like a Wheaties
Right.
box.
And then the beauty is they don't actually even have to be North Dakotans.
Mm,
I could go out there and I could have some kind of a draft for them
right,
to
it's a
be here.
real saddest music in the world situation.
Very much so. A little Guy Madden reference right there.
So then would you be one of the pickleball players
No.
or would you be the team manager?
What I would be is the owner. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so I would be the Jerry Jones of the North Dakota pickleball team. And then I'd get to pick a name, which is
What
exciting.
would you call it?
And
You could definitely get pickle sponsorship.
that's the thing. I think I could do big things with this. And then it would be nice to have some kind of like official like pickleball stadium. And
Mm,
I mean that could be something as easy as just like putting some folding chairs out at Island Park when I reserve the pickleball courts. But
great.
like teams travel, like they would cut like a team from Miami would travel to North Dakota and play us here, and then there's a pickleball World Series. Pickleball is huge right now.
So
It's
I actually
massive.
I don't know the rules set to pickleball.
Pickleball very similar to tennis, but you're using a different type of ball, so the movement it's not as fast.
Okay.
So it's for one of the reasons that it's so popular with like older athletes is
Oh,
they're like
are you
this
using
is much easier to use.
are you using a shuttlecock?
I don't believe so. I think that's only for badminton.
Okay, so it's just a
It's a
pickleball.
pickleball. And the racket, I guess. I don't know if you call it a racket because it's a flat thing. It looks it looks like a big
Paddle?
version of table tennis.
It makes me think that pickleball would have a paddle.
Yeah, it's a pickleball paddle. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a paddle. It's like, it's like when you play ping pong. Um but I can't Tucker even explain to you in my day job, I have found out that pickleball is the nation's favorite player, like favorite recreational sport right now. There
Okay.
are hundreds of YMCA's and athletic associations who are tearing out old tennis courts and putting in pickleball courts. If
Mm,
you are planning to open something new, you're doubling the amount of pickleball courts you originally planned for. The people who are into pickleball are so into pickleball they're playing it. It's now being incorporated into everyday things like sitcoms are having pickleball episodes because pickleball is
mhm.
just getting to be so incredibly huge. If if you were to go out somewhere and someone was like, "Oh, I'm going to play pickleball after this," and you're like, "Oh, do you like pickleball?" Imagine all of the lights in the room dimming except for a spotlight on you and this person. And they'll be like, pickleball is life. Life
Yeah.
is pickleball.
If I was an announcer for the TV broadcast of pickleball games, whenever someone would make a score, I'd say, "And that's a pickle."
Oh, there you go. I'd be like, he brined him on that one, Tucker. And that's the thing is like, it has nothing to do with pickles. And that's what I think maybe is the most frustrating thing for me.
Where does it get the name?
I'm assuming a guy named like Ted Pickle is the one
That
who created pickleball originally.
this is something that should be in the rules if you're going to be starting a franchise and joining the National Pickleball League.
Well, like it's a good thing it's not called like Ding Dong Ball, right?
Mhm.
Or everyone's dingaling is out, which would I mean,
Well,
well, that's the thing is in Florida at a lot of clothing optional facilities. Okay, so natural facilities. The pickleball is huge right now, so much so that there is a nude pickleball World Series. Yeah,
really?
I'm telling you, pickleball, man. That is the wave of the future. That's the big thing right now. I talked about it on air once, and a guy who was driving from Jamestown to the cities stopped at the studio, brought his pickleball stuff in, and showed me how to play using a brick wall inside our lobby.
Okay.
And just wouldn't stop would just talk and talk. Like, he monologued to me how this is a strategy, this is how you play it, this is great, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I get it. You love pickleball. And
Well,
I hope that they're teaching it to high school students because they're going to play with their grandparents.
So literally in 2022, the state of Washington passed a bill making pickleball the official sport of Washington state.
Oh man, they're going to get a lot of attention. They're going to get a lot of people who move over there for that.
Right. And so I guess that's where it was invented. It was invented on someone's family court. Yeah, and I guess the COVID-19 pandemic really boosted the sport's growth is what it's saying. So this is intriguing to me. I'm going to have to wow, there's like a whole no volley zone, right service court, left service court, and there's the pickleball paddle, which is definitely just called a pickleball paddle with one 26-hole pickleball blue and one 40-hole pickleball yellow. So the balls, they're like wiffle balls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dude, I'm telling you, and here's the thing. You could read all you want. You really need to find someone who's into pickleball to give you a pickleball 101. In fact, if you're listening right now, I'll give out Tucker's home phone number here in a little bit, and you can call and invite him out to all of your pickleball playing. But
I mean, it says the regulations that the ball must be made of a durable molded material with a smooth surface and must have between 26 and 40 evenly spaced circular holes. There's a whole thing about how much they can weigh. And then oftentimes they will play with balls with smaller holes outside to minimize the effects of wind.
yeah, right.
So this has really been thought out.
Oh, I'm telling you, pickleball really has a lot of great following like that. Okay, Tucker, time to put this one to rest. The official KFGO, cut that out of there. I'm going to start this over. Well,
yeah.
All right, Tucker, it's time to put this one to rest. I've got a pickleball court reserved right now that I got to go. I got to do some pickling and some balling and some pickleballing. Hey, and when you find out about whether or not you like being a pickleball player or not, you let me know because I got franchise opportunities just waiting for you. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. Originally, I had come up with my own sport, and it was called cucumber ball, and I guess I just needed to let it rest a little bit more.